My name is Natalie Reed. I'm 28 years old. I live in Oakland now. No mansion, no trust fund, no family photos on the wall. On paper, I'm no one special. And according to my family, I stopped being a Reed the day I walked out 3 years ago. That's how they made it sound. Like exile was my choice. But it wasn't. It was written for me. In silence, in locked gates, in press releases that named my siblings as heirs while erasing me like I was some typo in their legacy. I used to wonder if maybe I deserved it. If staying quiet, staying gone, was the safest thing I could do. Until the day my father died. And I wasn't even allowed at the funeral. No phone call, no message. Just a corporate email telling me not to show up. Like grief was a PR risk. Like I didn't count anymore. But then, 6 days later, an envelope slid through my door. No return address, no apology. Just a name I hadn't seen in years. And a single line in my father's handwriting. Give this to Natalie. She's the only one I trust. That's when I realized my story wasn't over. It had barely started. Because they might have erased me from the will, from the house, from the family Christmas photo. But they forgot something important. I'm the only one my father trusted to tell the truth. And trust? That's something no court, no headline, no sister with a better lawyer can take away. What would you do if your own family rewrote your place in the story, erased your name like you were never there? Would you walk away or walk back in? Tell me in the comments. And if you believe silence isn't the end, it's the beginning of justice, follow the channel for more real stories like this one. I found out about his death from a news alert on my phone while standing in line at a grocery store. Just like that. A push notification. William Reed, philanthropist and founder of Reed Legacy Foundation, dies at 68. No one called. No one wrote. I refreshed the page 3 times, convinced it was some cruel hoax. It wasn't. A day later, I received an email. Not from my brother, not from my sister, but from a firm representing the family's publicist. The subject line, regarding funeral attendance. The body of the message was shorter than a recipe card. Given current sensitivities and the high-profile nature of the memorial, the family has decided it would be best for all involved if Natalie Reed refrains from attending the service. No condolences, no pretense of grief. Just a press strategy. I stared at the words until they blurred. I didn't cry. I couldn't afford to. I spent the next few days trapped in the 4 corners of my 1-bedroom apartment in Oakland. I'd gotten used to silence over the past 3 years, but this one rang different. Colder, deader. My phone stayed stubbornly blank. No apology from Daniel. No attempt from Caroline to soften the cruelty. Online, the photos began circulating. Grace Cathedral filled with flowers, socialites, CEOs, senators, and my sister at the podium, in a sleek black dress with pearls I'd once admired as a child. Caroline Reed delivers heartfelt eulogy to honor her father's legacy. I wasn't mentioned. Instead, the narrative was clean and curated. Mr. Reed is survived by his eldest daughter, Caroline, and son, Daniel, who will jointly oversee Reed Legacy Foundation. It was as though I had never existed, erased. The day I left the mansion, 3 years ago, it had been raining. Not the dramatic kind that pounds windows and echoes anger, but a soft, quiet mist, like the house itself was sighing. I was 25, accused of stealing $25,000 from the Reed Legacy Foundation. I hadn't. But evidence had a way of appearing in all the right places when Caroline wanted it to. My father never said he believed me. He didn't say much at all. That was his style. Cold diplomacy disguised as quiet disappointment. And yet, when I walked out, suitcase in hand, he didn't stop me. Just stood by the window, back straight, jaw tight. I told myself I didn't care. But I carried the silence of that moment like a splinter buried deep in my skin, forgotten until touched. On the 6th day after the funeral, a small white envelope slid through the mail slot. No return address, no stamp, just my name. Natalie, in a handwriting I hadn't seen in years. My hands trembled before I even opened it. Inside, a business card, thick and expensive stock. Ethan Clark, Estate Law and Legacy Planning, Montgomery Street, San Francisco direct line, handwritten in ink. Private, 415. 5XX. XXXX. Tucked behind it was a sticky note, creased and yellowed. In my father's writing, "Give this to Natalie. She's the only one I trust." I dropped the envelope. My knees buckled. I sat down on the carpet like a child who'd fallen too hard to cry. My chest ached. From confusion, from betrayal, from some ancient hope trying to rise through the rubble. Why now? Why say nothing for years, then leave this behind? I turned the card over again, as if a better explanation might be written on the back. It wasn't. Just embossed gold. Clean. Professional. Cold. I wiped my face with my sleeve and reached for my phone. Fingers hovering above the dial. I stared at the number so long it felt burned into my vision. 1 ring. 2 rings. A click. Natalie? The voice was familiar. Deeper, older, but unmistakably his. I froze. My voice caught somewhere between my throat and the memory of what we were. Once. The last time I saw Ethan Clark, he handed me a restraining order. He couldn't look me in the eye. He didn't say a word, just stood in the marble foyer of the Reed mansion like a messenger boy with expensive shoes and a spine made of regret. The envelope trembled slightly in his hands, but his voice was even. "Ms. Reed," he said, as if we hadn't once spent entire summers arguing about jazz and philosophy and whether fate was real. He handed it to me, nodded, and walked out. It was Caroline's order, of course, the Reed family version of an eraser. And yet, the voice on the phone last night, that brief, breathless Natalie, had sounded nothing like the man who obeyed orders. Today, I stood in front of the old estate building on Montgomery Street, trying to decide if I was here to confront a coward or ask for a miracle. The building was narrow and sandstone red, wedged between sleek towers of steel like a stubborn memory that refused to modernize. Inside, it smelled of mahogany and aged paper, and something faintly citrus. Like things were supposed to be clean, but the truth still clung to the walls. He stepped out from the glass office door when he saw me. "Natalie," Ethan said. No title, no pretense. He looked older, naturally, but also like someone who'd been carrying too many sealed envelopes. His once boyish charm had been pressed flat by courtrooms and family politics. The last 3 years had made his jaw tighter, his expression slower. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, gesturing me into his office. "I wasn't sure you deserved it," I replied. He winced. Good. He deserved worse. We sat down across a dark wooden desk. There were no photos, no degrees on the wall. Just a digital clock that ticked a little too loud in the quiet. "I didn't have a choice back then," he started. "Neither did I said. "But I lost everything." He looked down. "That's why you're here." I crossed my arms. "Let's get to it, Ethan." "What is this?" I pulled out the card and the note my father had written. "Give this to Natalie. She's the only one I trust." Ethan took a deep breath, stood, and opened a drawer in a side cabinet. He retrieved a small black folder and placed it between us. The folder bore no label. "Just wait." He flipped it open. "Your father came to me last year," he said, voice low. "He updated his will. Completely." My breath caught. Ethan continued. "He named you primary beneficiary of the estate. Not Caroline, not Daniel. You." I blinked. "And where is this will now?" He looked pained. "Gone. The original is missing. No digital copies. He insisted on a hard copy for legal integrity. It was stored in a private safe in his home. According to the records, it was signed on May 12th, 2022. One witness was his nurse. The other," he hesitated, "was me." I stared at him. You signed the will? He nodded. I was there. I watched him do it. Then why didn't you say anything after he died? I tried. I notified Daniel. Caroline intercepted. Then they locked me out of further communications. I was unavailable for comment, apparently. And you let that stand? He looked me in the eyes then. I thought maybe it was what he wanted. Bullshit, I whispered. He didn't argue. There's something else, he said, reaching into the drawer again. A small silver USB. This is a partial video recording of your father reading his will aloud. He asked me to keep it. Off the record. He slid it toward me. I stared at it like it might burn. Is it enough? I asked. He shook his head. Legally, number it's not notarized, not filed with the probate court. The original will is gone, which means this could be dismissed as sentiment. I swallowed hard, but it's his voice. Yes, he said. And sometimes a voice is louder than paper. He plugged it into his monitor. The screen came to life, fuzzy at first, then focused. There he was, my father, seated at his desk, the same one where I'd once written birthday cards to him as a child. He looked straight into the camera. He looked tired, but calm. If you're watching this, he said, then someone has tried to silence what I left behind. I gasped. He continued, I have revised my will to reflect what I believe is just. Natalie, if this message reaches you, then you are the only one I trust to carry forward what matters. The rest, they've lost their way. The screen went black. I stared at it long after the light faded. Ethan cleared his throat. We can try to submit this, but it won't hold on its own. Not without corroborating evidence. I nodded slowly. Then we find it, I said. He tilted his head. Natalie, going up against them will not be easy. I'm not looking for easy. I met his gaze. I'm looking for what's mine. My sister built a wall of lawyers and bank accounts. I'm coming with the one thing she doesn't expect. The truth. It had been 3 days since I watched my father's voice fill the screen. 3 days of staring at that USB drive like it was a ticking bomb. 3 days of scanning old emails, cross-referencing timelines, calling former staff, signing affidavits, and waiting for Ethan to say we had enough to proceed. This morning, he looked at me across his office and said just 2 words. We're ready. My hands trembled as I signed the motion. The form was cold, clinical. Request to open formal probate hearing and submit late evidence of testamentary intent. The words looked official, but to me it was more than that. It was a declaration of war. A few hours later, Ethan submitted it in person at the San Mateo County Probate Court. With it, we included his signed affidavit, the metadata records on the video file, and the partial transcription of my father's recorded will. It wasn't everything we needed, not yet, but it was enough to force the court to listen. And then the world started listening too. By the next morning, headlines began creeping into niche legal blogs and Bay Area finance newsletters. Reed family rift? Youngest daughter files challenge to multi-million-dollar estate. Will war at Reed Legacy Foundation? Natalie Reed returns from exile with legal claims. They didn't care about truth, only blood and scandal. That afternoon, I received a letter, hand-delivered, my name scrawled in slanted cursive across the envelope. No return address. Inside, on hotel stationery, in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting. I'm sorry, I can't help you. I have too much at stake. You understand? D. No signature. No greeting. Just guilt dressed as courtesy. I folded the note once, twice, 3 times, until the paper threatened to tear. Then I slipped it in my coat pocket and headed to the courthouse. The scheduling session wasn't supposed to be dramatic. These things rarely were, just procedural. A judge reviews filings, checks calendars, confirms viability. But when I entered the courtroom, I felt her. Caroline. She stood near the back, wearing navy blue and sunglasses indoors, flanked by two attorneys in sharp gray suits. Her presence wasn't necessary. It was intentional. She was marking her territory. I didn't acknowledge her. I walked past without a glance, sat down at the front. Ethan leaned toward me. "You okay?" I kept my eyes forward. She's not the one who gets to ask that anymore. The judge was a stern woman with a clipped tone and zero tolerance for drama. Perfect. She reviewed the motion, clicked her pen twice, and finally looked at Ethan. "You're submitting late evidence of a handwritten note and digital recording as preliminary proof of intent?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ethan said calmly. "Signed affidavit included. Chain of custody logged." The judge nodded slowly. "Very well. Due to the public nature of the estate, I'll expedite review." She paused. "Probate hearing scheduled, June 18th, 9 a.m. Notification will be issued today." Gavel strike. Case set. World tilted. As I stood to leave, I felt Caroline's gaze sear into my back. I didn't turn. But in the hallway outside, she caught up with me. "Natalie," she said, voice low but venomous, "you're opening something you won't be able to shut." I looked her straight in the eyes. The same eyes that used to look out for me when we were children. The same ones that had iced over years ago. "You should have stayed out of this," she added, inching closer. I held my breath, then exhaled slow. "I did. For 3 years. You kept pulling me back." Her nostrils flared. I took a step forward. "I'm just getting started." I sat across from my siblings in the courtroom built by our father's donations, and I wasn't even listed in the obituary. Rows of polished oak benches, a dozen cameras discreetly tucked behind notepads, and a judge who looked like she'd rather be anywhere but mediating a family bloodbath. Welcome to the probate hearing of the century. Or so said one of the whispering headlines outside. My hands were still, but my heart was slamming against my ribs like a prisoner trying to get out. Caroline sat to my left, flanked by two attorneys in steel gray suits and a smile that belonged in a weapon catalog. Daniel sat beside her, rigid, quiet, his eyes cast downward like the carpet had answers he didn't want to hear out loud. They looked put together, confident. Like this courtroom was just another boardroom, and I was an unexpected speed bump. I was wearing a suit 2 years out of date and shoes that pinched slightly at the toes. But I had something else. The truth. And if that wasn't enough, I didn't deserve to win. 3 minutes in, I realized truth wouldn't be enough. Caroline's lead attorney stood tall, projecting sincerity with surgical precision. "Your Honor," he began, "we are deeply saddened by the necessity of today's hearing, but we are here because an estranged family member, with a well-documented history of instability, has presented unverified material, potentially fabricated, in an attempt to overturn a clear and legal estate arrangement." He didn't look at me once, but I could feel his words painting a portrait, not of a daughter seeking justice, but a delusional outsider clawing for scraps. "Ms. Natalie Reed," he continued, "has not spoken to her father in over 3 years. She was the subject of an internal investigation regarding embezzlement from the Reed Foundation in 2020, and though charges were never filed, the circumstances were alarming. The family attempted to support her through counseling referrals and rehabilitation options, all of which were declined." I blinked. "Rehabilitation?" Ethan tensed beside me. "Permission to submit Exhibit B," the lawyer said, holding up a glossy folder. A copy of a psychological referral from 2021, submitted by Caroline Reed after multiple episodes of erratic behavior from her sister, including an incident involving a public disturbance and threats of self-harm. "That's a lie," I said under my breath. The judge looked at me sharply. "Ms. Reed, you'll have your opportunity to respond. Please allow counsel to proceed." I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste metal. Ethan rose to his feet next, calm and professional. "We acknowledge the events of 2020, he said evenly. But we also submit that Mr. William Reed never pursued charges, nor did he make any formal statements against his daughter. In fact, we submit an affidavit signed by Mr. Reed's legal counsel, myself, stating his intention to revise his will in favor of Natalie Reed. He handed over the document. "And the video?" the judge asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. We have a video of Mr. Reed reading his revised testament aloud. Though informal, it captures clear intent." Caroline's lawyer immediately objected. The video was not notarized, not time-stamped by any recognized probate method, and has no formal chain of custody. Furthermore, Mr. Reed's mental state at the time has not been verified. "We have voice authentication underway," Ethan replied, "and can provide metadata logs showing the file's creation date." The judge held up her hand. "I will review the affidavit," she said, "but the video, without proper chain of custody or corroborating documents, is inadmissible at this time." The room spun a little. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. No one was listening. Or maybe they were. Listening just enough to dismiss me. I saw reporters in the gallery writing furiously, no doubt already prepping their clickbait. "Unstable daughter fails to overturn Reed will." My father once told me that silence in a courtroom could be louder than words. Right now, it sounded like defeat. We recessed 20 minutes later. I walked stiffly down the corridor, jaw clenched, breath shallow. I didn't even realize I'd been gripping the edge of my coat until I saw the wrinkles I'd made. Caroline appeared beside me like smoke, smooth, quiet, no scent of emotion. "You know," she said softly, "this could have ended differently." I didn't respond. "You'll never win," she continued. "Even if he loved you, love doesn't survive in court. Only evidence does. And all you brought was a ghost." I turned to look at her fully. She was calm. So goddamn calm. "That's where you're wrong," I said. "I didn't come here for his love. I came to prove he left something for me when none of you did." She blinked, just once. Then she smiled, a small, dangerous smile. "We'll see." I didn't need to win their love. I needed to prove they couldn't erase mine. The house was dark when we arrived. Not abandoned. No Reed home ever truly slept, but emptied long enough for ghosts to stir. Caroline and Daniel were out attending a gala. Of course they were. Nothing said family legacy like a charity photo op while the foundation that bore your name rotted from the inside. Ethan killed the engine and checked his watch. We had an hour, maybe less. My fingers trembled against the key I hadn't used in 3 years. It slid into the lock like it had been waiting. The scent hit me first. Cedar polish, something citrus, and that faint trace of leather-bound paper. The past hadn't been cleaned out yet. The mansion still smelled like my father. 3 floors of secrets and only one door mattered tonight. The study, the place where he read to us as children, where he signed contracts that launched empires, where he said nothing the day I left. I stepped inside, pulse drumming behind my ears. "You're sure it's here?" Ethan asked, scanning the bookshelves. "He wrote everything down," I whispered. He didn't believe in memory. He believed in record. We moved quickly, searching drawers, behind picture frames, beneath desk panels. Dust whispered back like old breath. I opened the second drawer to the right, the one he always locked, and there it was. A folder. Thick, red, heavy. A Redwell. I laid it gently on the desk. Ethan leaned over my shoulder. Inside was a dated memo, handwritten and clipped to a folded document. My father's penmanship. Deliberate, precise. "Revised will sign 12th May 2022. Witnessed. Held by Ethan Clark, copy for safekeeping. Notified, Caroline and Daniel, no." My throat tightened. Beneath it, a cassette. Mini. Black with a faded label. In the silence that followed, I could hear my heartbeat, and Ethan's breath catching slightly. "Do you have anything that can play it?" I asked. He pulled out his phone. "I can record it, but we'll need to authenticate it later." Later doesn't help us now. I know, he said, but it helps us win. The small stereo on the desk still worked. Luxury aged well here. I slid the tape in and pressed play. Static, then breath. William Reed, personal log, May 12th, 8:10 p.m. My eyes closed. The voice wrapped around my spine like a second skin. If something happens, if this is ever disputed, Natalie is to inherit the majority. I don't need courts to tell me what my children deserve. I know which one never sold out. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't speak. The others will scream. They'll threaten. But they'll know I meant it. This isn't sentiment. It's structure. I raised 2 politicians and 1 conscience. That's what legacy should be built on. A pause. If you're hearing this, Natalie, don't let them bury what I left behind. The tape clicked to an end. I couldn't speak, couldn't blink. I stared at the stereo like the voice might come back. That he'd have just one more word, one more explanation for the silence, for the years he let me think I wasn't enough. Ethan slid the cassette into a padded pouch and sealed it. That's admissible if we move fast, he said. But we need verification. Audio forensics, sworn affidavit, timestamp from this house. I know someone. He already had his phone out. The lamp on the desk flickered briefly. A power surge, or maybe just the house exhaling. I scanned the room one last time, and then I saw it, tucked in the corner of the Redwell folder. A second sheet. Brief. A line at the top. Executor's instructions. To be released only if contested by any family member. It was signed. Initialed. The notary stamp faint, but present. Ethan looked at me as I handed it to him. This changes everything, he said. No, I replied. This proves everything. The verification process started within the hour. Ethan's contact confirmed the audio bore no manipulation. The handwriting on the memo matched 6 prior documents archived under Reed legacy filings. The Redwell folder was dated, sealed. Chain of custody initiated. All the pieces my father had hidden, not to deceive, but to protect. Everything they thought they'd erased still breathed. Ethan returned later that night, eyes blazing. It's legally admissible, and it's going to change everything. I used to think silence was safety, that if I stayed out of their way, if I didn't press too hard, speak too loudly, or remember too much, I'd be left alone. And for a long time, I mistook being forgotten for being free. But standing in that courtroom with every eye turned toward me, not with sympathy, not even curiosity, but calculation, I finally understood the truth. They didn't just want me out of the will. They wanted me erased. I wasn't supposed to return. I wasn't supposed to fight. I was supposed to disappear like the lie they built their version of the truth upon. And for a while, I almost did. 3 years of exile. 3 years of replaying that final conversation with my father, which wasn't even a conversation, really. Just a stare through a half-open door. 3 years of wondering whether I'd meant so little, or if I'd simply misunderstood what he couldn't say. Then he spoke. Not in life, but through a voice preserved in a mini-cassette, through his handwriting in a sealed folder, through a line on a sticky note no one was meant to see. Give this to Natalie. She's the only one I trust. Those weren't words of doubt. They were conviction, and they changed everything. The hearing didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel seen. For the first time in years, they threw everything at me. Old stories, half-truths, diagnoses I'd never heard, and accusations I'd long stopped defending. They weaponized my absence, my silence, my grief. They used my mistakes like knives and my name like a curse. But I held the line. Not because I had thicker armor or sharper lawyers or better press, but because for once I had the truth, and I chose not to let it go quietly. I didn't expect Daniel to speak. I didn't need him to. But when he did, when he finally stood and said, "Our father trusted her," it wasn't redemption. It wasn't absolution. It was an echo. Because in the end, the silence that had once swallowed me now belonged to them. Their confidence turned into defense, their arrogance into strategy, their certainty into panic. And I had nothing left to prove. The court ruled. The revised will was accepted. My name reinstated. My share protected. My father's voice recorded not just in law, but in legacy. And yet, I walked out of that courthouse not with victory, but with a strange kind of quiet. Not the heavy kind I used to carry, but the kind that comes after a storm. Clean, cracked open, honest. I didn't go back to the mansion. I didn't need the money to heal. What I needed was something I hadn't dared to name since the day I left. Closure. And now, I had it. Justice didn't come as a roar. It arrived as a whisper. Undeniable. Recorded. Signed in ink and memory. It came not because power allowed it, but because someone refused to be silent. Because someone fought back. Some things don't rot because of time, but because no one dares to dig. What happened in that courtroom wasn't just a win for a disinherited daughter. It was a warning to every empire built on erasure. A reminder that no wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Because when betrayal is met with resistance, and injustice with courage, even the most elaborate deception will crumble. Not all at once, but precisely when it matters. Justice may arrive late, but when it does, it echoes louder than the lie that tried to replace it. And remember, truth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it arrives quietly, through a single envelope or a single voice refusing to be erased. If Natalie's story spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories about family, legacy, and the quiet kind of justice that echoes long after the room falls silent.